Hey everybody, it's ECAP here, and in this video we have the latest beta build with the latest Retribution Paladin changes. Now I've tried to calm down a little bit, but I am quite a bit annoyed, so I'm just warning you at the beginning of the video. I'm a bit annoyed. I'm be a little bit more doomer than I ever normally am, just because I'm annoyed. Now you might start dooming because you hear that. Our damage did not get super nerfed or anything like that in either single target or AoE. Mythic Plus largely was completely untouched if you're mostly a Mythic Plus player. Um, yeah, there's just some just not non-intelligent changes that were made that just kind of show that the person maybe doesn't get it, and that's very frustrating. That's what has me so frustrated, basically, right? Is that just some really terrible decisions, including one thing I'm going to rant about that just absolutely has to be changed. It cannot go live like this. Let's just talk about, let's just go through the changes first before we dive in. Retribution Aura has been removed. You can see that on the screen here as well. There's no Retribution Aura, it's just Crusader Aura. We're going to talk a lot more about this. This is obviously a huge blow to you if you were bringing the ret buff for your raid or something, right? Let's say you have a Holy Pally main or a tank or prop Pally main, and they bring the Devo Aura, you bring the red Aura. You no longer bring a raid buff. So now that Shaman's got a raid buff, ret Paladins, if there's even one other Paladin in the raid, are the only thing that does not have a raid buff. So rip to ret Paladins if you are in a guild that does stuff like that. I mean, I am just lucky that I'm not in that kind of guild because this is terrible. Now with Shamans having a raid buff, ret Paladin, bottom of the basement. So there's that. So their developers know it was like, oh, they basically were saying we don't want to force raids to bring two Paladins. Now that we're forcing them to bring a Shaman, this is the gist of it, right? They're like, okay, what are we going to do in response to giving the Shaman a raid buff? We're going to take away, because Paladins have two, we're going to take it away. And now ret brings nothing to the raid. You can of course spec into Devo Aura, right? That's not a big deal. So you can just grab Devo Aura if you're the only Paladin in the raid. Obviously, there's no added benefit to having two Devo Auras, right? So Aura Switch Vengeance node has been replaced with Crusader Aura. Again, we're going to talk more about this. Again, just not having any idea of what's going on by whoever did that change. Expurgation now lasts 9 seconds, was 6 seconds, and it was buffed to commensurate that. This is good. This is a good change. Very good for Mythic Plus. It's good for single target as well. This is just cool. They probably didn't want the dot to be so quick, maybe. Maybe it fell off too early compared to other classes' dots. I'm not sure what they're thinking of it was, but this actually is a good change. Templar Strikes now only has one charge, was 2 charges. So we'll talk more about it when we get into the talents in the game client. But this is basically your CSAA, your Crusader Strike Auto Attack node has a choice between Templar Strikes and that. If you did not play at the very beginning of the rework, you probably never even messed around with Templar Strikes that much. Templar Strikes has been buffed insanely, okay? So overall, as of this second, this is just a buff to ret, right? Because this is buffed insanely. So now so if you don't know what it is, you use basically a Crusader Strike, but then it gets like a Super Crusader Strike after you use it. So you use regular Crusader Strike into a Super Crusader Strike, and you just want to make sure that you use it before it fades away or whatever. The problem is, before what it was is then you could go into another regular Crusader Strike into another Super Crusader Strike, and they eventually had to nerf that damage down so much because literally one of the best things you could do was just sit there and spam it. So imagine just spamming your Crusader Strike over and over again, and then like using Holy Power Spenders, and you could literally do that at one point before they like on the PTR or whatever, but you could just sit there and spam that button. So what they've done is instead of being able to basically press it 4 times in a row, that you can only do it 2 times in a row and then a cooldown 2 times in a row. The problem is, and this is going to be nerfed, I can almost guarantee it. I'm not calling for a nerf. People get mad when you call for nerfs. But what the problem is, the Super Crusader Strike, the Templar Slash, that actually does more damage than your Final Verdict right now. So That doesn't really make a lot of sense. You have to spend holy power to do this attack, but this one that generates holy power does way more damage. And so obviously it's going to get nerfed. So this isn't going to, I don't, it's either going to get nerfed to the point where you still use Crusader Strike auto attack, or that it's slightly better than Crusader Strike auto attack. But it's going to be rough to ever keep them close together, because once you buff Templar Strikes, you do more than your finisher. And this goes into a whole other thing where I've said before in different videos, I think Templar's Verdict needs a buff on its own. And this kind of highlights that, because they can't even buff one of our other abilities. Like our Blade of Justice almost does as much as our Final Verdict as well, with the tier set and stuff. And so, like, it just feels weird. And then they fixed an issue with Art of War. So this was a bug. So basically what's going to happen is you're going to get slightly less Art of War procs than you used to get. That's like when your auto attacks hit, you get a recharge of your Blade of Justice. This was bugged, basically. And it basically caused them to proc all the time. I don't know if you ever noticed that, but they constantly proc for you. You just almost always have a Blade of Justice to use at any moment that you want to. This has been fixed, and it is noticeable for sure. But it's not that bad. I was playing around with it already. I wanted to test a couple things while I cooled it off, and it's not bad. It's just basically fixing a bug. I'm not gonna be mad about that. Especially because overall, like I said, this didn't nerf our damage in any way. It's just really dumb changes. Now let's get into one of the dumb changes that's not on here. It is in the game though, so I'm not sure why it wasn't on their little list here. So we talked about Expurg, Art of War, Templar Strikes. There was a Vanguard of Justice change as well that's not applied on the in the beta client. Again, this change is pointless until this is not a 2-point node. I don't really care about Vanguard of Justice. It's a worthless talent point, so we're not even going to care about that. However, I know a lot of you are fans of Judge, Jury, Executioner, and this was nerfed pretty considerably. Wasn't completely nerfed. It's still probably something you'd want to use on cleave fights, but it was nerfed considerably. And so here's what it does now. Holy Power general abilities have a chance to cause your next Final Verdict to hit an additional 3 targets at 80% effectiveness. So the cleave damage, each one is 20% nerfed, so that's considerable. Now it was 100%, right? And whatever, that is a lot. But if you watch my Judge Your Executioner video, or actually it was the single target Mythic Plus video where I talk a lot about Judge Your Executioner, I was actually saying it might need a buff, and they nerfed it. So, oh man, that's a little weird. Just to be commensurate with other specs cleave abilities, right? Just to kind of make it even. Now you might be wondering, why does it now have no chance to cause? Because it went from 15 to 0. So basically they changed it to procs per minute. I think it's right here. Procs per minute changed from none to 3. So basically now it's just going to proc 3 times per minute. And yeah, it's does haste. I think haste might affect it though. So maybe it could proc more. I'm not sure exactly how this what this wording means. I'm not into coding language at all, or WoW language, I guess. But its base is 3. It looks like haste can do something with it. Otherwise, I mean, they listed haste here, so maybe you get that up. But basically, it's going to happen a lot less often. So they basically, what they're doing here, to be clear, is as I tested out in single in Mythic Plus, right? What they did here is you only want to use this as a passive cleave on like a raid fight now, right? A passive cleave that's hitting the targets next to the boss as some extra damage that you wouldn't normally have. It's only 1 talent point, so I still imagine you will take it in that case, right? You'd still take it to cleave onto ads that are next to a boss. However, it's not going to be as potent for AoE because it's not going to be constantly proccing, how I've talked about and shown multiple times on my channel here, how it constantly procs. It's not going to be doing that anymore. And so for Mythic Plus, this is probably not going to be the play. It already was not going to be the play, in my opinion. And now it's just even further down the list as far as Mythic Plus goes. Doing like a single target cleave spec, you're going to want to go full AoE, almost certainly there. Obviously, tuning and stuff can change, but we can see the direction that they're going, right? And so far I haven't sounded too mad, hopefully. Again, this is not overall, I mean, this is a nerf, right, to our cleave. Um, it's hard to judge cleave. This definitely just we weren't the best cleave even with it, so it's obviously going to put us back down the thing. But where we're used to being, right? We're not used to being good at cleave, anyways. Um, so it is what it is, right? At the end of the day, what I want Judge Your Executioner to end with, whether it gets put back where it was, no matter where it ends, is I just want us to be able to cleave in the raid. That's all I really care about. If we can cleave in the raid with this ability, because our AoE is so good, so I'm not worried about the cleaving in the Mythic Plus. Our AoE is very good. If I can cleave in the raid, I'll be happy. But if I don't even use this in the raid, if I don't use Judge Jury in the raid, then I'm going to be very unhappy, because it's, you know, it's supposed to be our ability to cleave with, basically, and it's just not going to be used. So, all right. So now let's talk about this up here, the Retribution Aura being removed. So now we have just Crusader Aura, and we start with it as Rat. So we just have Crusader Aura as Rat. Whoop-de-doo, right? It's completely pointless. It's a point that we're forced to take because of it just being one of the main points. You can't click out of it, as you can see there. It's just, we have Crusader Aura now. Now, to have anything useful, we'll have to put a point over here into Devotion Aura. That's not a huge deal. We can make that work. That part's not bad, but having Crusader Aura here is just so silly because it doesn't do anything. And having it be like a forced talent, like, okay, what does Lay on Hands do? Oh, it does lots of good stuff. What's Blessing of Freedom do? It does lots of good stuff. Oh, what's Hammer of Wrath do? Oh, that's really, really good. I guess we don't have to have Lay on Hands, but Freedom and Hammer of Wrath, two things that we do have to have, those things are both really good. Crusader Aura doesn't do anything. Why do we have to have this? This needs to be buried somewhere that we don't have to take it. I don't care. I just don't want to see it here anymore. It's terrible. Every Paladin should just... So what should happen now, Devo, if you're going to get rid of Ret Aura, every Paladin should just have this. Why is this a talent point? Every Paladin should just have this because this one's pointless. This one is for Outdoor World. This one is for questing. This is for whatever, right? This is not for, like, playing the game, like playing any kind of endgame whatsoever, where people really care about doing their talent points in a certain specific way. That's why it still should be there for the casual player who wants Crusader Aura, but it shouldn't be a mandated thing. It's just, what a worthless talent to start with as a Ret Paladin. And so this is just bad. I don't like this at all. I mean, whatever. They need to move this or remove it or whatever. Give Devo Aura a baseline. What's the point of even having auras anymore at this point? They just remove them all anyways. This is just dumb from a Paladin perspective, from class fantasy perspective, from every perspective like that. It's just dumb. And that's the one. This is the part that makes me the most annoyed. They not only removed Ret Aura, but we're forced to take Crusader Aura, and it's just pointless and dumb. As we come over here, we talked about let's talk about the one positive change that's probably going to not end up being a positive change. But we have Templar Strikes. This is, like, as I already talked about, this is already buffed extremely high. It's probably going to be nerfed. So you would take this point almost certainly. You no longer have to take your auto attack speed because you're going to be using that. So that actually frees up a talent point if you want to. You can put that talent point somewhere else. However, I will say the way things are looking, it's almost like you're almost running out of places with useful talent points, to be completely honest. I guess you could put it in Heart of the Crusader there, perhaps. Take that out of there and put it there. I don't know. I imagine Heart might do a little bit more damage. But so this would kind of be like a very basic single target build that you could have for straight single target. Obviously, if you did have ads where you can constantly cleave on, you'd probably want to still have Judge Your Executioner. So that could be where you put that point then. So you could just swap those points, pure single target versus cleave or whatever. So this is not a big deal. If we use this, I'll be fine with that. I like Crusader Strike auto attack, but I don't mind using Templar Strikes either. I don't care. Whatever one does more damage is the one that I'll use. And I liked playing both of them. I like playing Templar Strikes right after the rework in Dragonflight, and I like playing Crusading Strikes now. I'm not too picky on that. Again, this talent change didn't matter at all. And then over here we have we have Expurgation getting the big buff, and then we have the Judge Jury Executioner, the Judge Jury Executioner nerf again. So this just makes it so you're not even going to be worry about taking it in AoE situations. And like I said, it'll kind of be like, this will kind of be, roughly speaking, I'm sure the simulator will tell you exactly what to pick, right? but this will roughly be like your single target build, roughly. And then when it's cleave, you'll probably, and let's say you do TS, you remove Zealot's Fervor, you put on this, something like that, right? Just generally speaking, it'll end up being something like that. But, you know, before it was almost like a, oh wait, am I going to take Judge Jury Executioner all the time just because it's so good? Probably not the case now that it's nerfed. So, yeah, obviously I'm not a huge fan of some of these changes, at least fundamentally, because basically what they're saying is Rat Pallies don't matter. You don't need a raid buff. We're going to give you Crusader Aura, which is trash. And then we're also going to nerf the cleave that we finally gave you. We finally did give you a cleave, but we're going to nerf it pretty considerably, and we're keeping an eye on it. And if you start cleaving too much, we're going to nerf it again. Right? That's kind of like the message that they're sending there. And so obviously I'm not a fan of that message. And yeah, overall, I'm not too doomer. I mentioned if you're a Mythic Plus player, right, you're playing some Herald of the Sun. Actually, I don't need to do that. If you're Herald of the Sun player and you are playing Mythic Plus, this doesn't affect you too much. Obviously, this still is dumb, but you might, as a Mythic Plus player, you might already be running Devo Aura for your group, right? Less damage taken, so that's not a big deal. It's annoying that you have this point. It's annoying that you have this for no reason, but it's not a huge deal because you probably already have this in many cases. And then over here, a lot of the stuff that you're going to be using isn't really affected by this. Really, the only effect is maybe you get an extra talent point. Maybe you remove Zealot's Fervor, go to Templar Strikes, and then, you know, you can have a talent point in Rush of Light. You could have a talent point into High Lord's Wrath, a talent point in Heart of the Crusader. You know, you'd have a little bit more options for other stuff. So as a Mythic Plus player, plus with the Expurgation buff and cleaving things, for Mythic Plus, you're like, okay, this isn't bad at all. It's mostly for Raid where it's really bad, because in Raid, as a Ret Paladin, at least, you know, normally it's like a Holy Paladin or a Prot Paladin bringing this to your Raid, Devo Aura. So as a Rat Paladin, you brought your Rat Aura, so it didn't feel bad wasting that point. Now this feels just like a -1, no matter what, in Raid scenario. And then, of course, having your Judge Jury nerf for Raid doesn't feel good either. So it's mostly like a Raid... Raid feels bad, man, but Mythic Plus still feels fine, would be my overall takeaway there. And then, yeah, just this stupid talent point here. Please fix that. Please, 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 please fix that, because we don't want that. So that'll be it for this one. A little bit dooming. As always, I do ask you to please subscribe to the channel. It helps me out a lot. If you're already a subscriber, I encourage you to check out the Patreon. And other than that, everybody, have a good one.